Terry staggered back from the impact, his heavy stomps leaving footprints on the solid ground. By the time he managed to stabilize himself, his face was completely pale, despite his rapid heartbeat. Sweat had formed on his forehead, and the edges of his shirt were frayed. There was even blood dripping from his fist. What a miserable sight. What? The crowd had been stunned into silence. None of them could have imagined that Terry might be at a disadvantage when it came to physical fights. This was unbelievable. No way. Terry got pushed back. Maggie was flabbergasted. Claudia was shocked as well. I didn't know Dustin was so strong. If she hadn't seen it for herself, she would have never believed that someone managed to withstand Terry's attack and even came out somewhat victorious. Impossible. How can someone like him be so powerful? Gordon and the other two were dumbfounded. The scenario they had in their minds was Dustin being destroyed with one punch, so why was he winning against Terry? What? Phil sat up straight, and his expression fell. There was no way his genius son was losing to a nobody. What would become of their family if Terry were to lose? Worse, Phil had made a bet with Hector using Tempest of the 18 Swords, so the consequences would be devastating. As expected. Hector smiled, pleasantly surprised. He knew that there was no way Dustin would recklessly challenge Terry if he wasn't confident in himself. Things are getting interesting. Paul stroked his beard, fascinated. For Dustin to be so skilled at medicine and martial arts at such a young age, Paul was sure that there was more to Dustin than meets the eye. Did you see that, sis? Dustin is winning. Ruth jumped up excitedly. Of course, I saw. I'm not blind. Natasha heaved a sigh of relief, the smile returning to her face. I told you he'd win, but you wouldn't believe me. When did you say that? I can't remember anymore. Ruth stared at Natasha quizzically. It doesn't matter. Natasha glared at her sister, who pouted. Ruth mumbled to herself, are all women like this? Their moods are so unpredictable. Back in the arena, Terry coughed as he tried to suppress the energy churning within his body. His expression was terrifying. He felt sorry for himself as the audience criticized him. Ever since he became famous, no one has ever successfully hurt him. Today, however, an accident occurred, and it was a blow to both his dignity and skills. His reputation would be ruined if he didn't get rid of Dustin completely. Abruptly, Terry burst out laughing wildly. You're strong, I'll give you that. I underestimated you earlier. With your capabilities, you could easily make your way into the top 20 of the Heavenly Immortals. Unfortunately, your opponent is me. To tell you the truth, I've been hiding my true strength since 3 years ago as I underwent all sorts of training. So far, none of my opponents have been strong enough for me to want to take off these shackles and use my full. Today, I'll show you how terrifying the power I've been saving up for the past 3 years is. Terry began removing his clothes, revealing the dark steel weights underneath that covered his body like armor. There were even a few attached to his limbs. Under everyone's disbelieving gazes, Terry gradually took off those weights, which landed on the ground with solid thuds that made people shudder. Holy smokes, he's a beast. Who would have thought that he was moving around with several 100 pounds of weight? Usually, it's hard to even walk with those tied around one's body, yet he's been walking normally and even fighting. What a monster. If he's that strong with limitations, what would happen if he took them off? I can only say that he's terrifying. The audience gossiped, shocked at how strict Terry was with himself. No one would like to wear clothes that weighed a few 100 pounds. No wonder Dustin seemed to have an edge over Terry. Terry has been holding himself back. Now that his restrictions are gone, I'm sure he'll win. Maggie regained her confidence. There's a reason he's ranked 13th on the Heavenly Immortals. Claudia couldn't help but respect Terry. Being a genius was nothing new, but it was always harder to accept when a genius was working harder than ordinary people. See? There's no way Terry would lose. He was just holding himself back. The smiles returned to Gordon, Zeke, and Zoe's faces when they found an excuse they could use. As expected of my son, he left a card up his sleeve. He'll win now. Phil let out a relieved sigh now that the manuscript seemed safe. It seems like Dustin will be in trouble again. Natasha and Ruth's expressions turned grave once more. They never thought that Terry might be hiding his true strength. Much better, after removing his burdens, Terry began stretching, and a confident smile returned to his face. To be able to force me to use my full strength, you should be proud to lose to me. It took Terry 3 years to get to where he was, so it was finally time to see the fruits of his labor. Don't speak too soon. This doesn't change anything. Dustin shook his head. You still don't seem to understand the situation right now. Without those weights, my speed and power will greatly increase. I'll even let you in on a secret. Fist fights aren't my forte, swords are. Terry opened his palm, and a sword that a servant had been holding onto flew into his palm, instantly strengthening his aura to the point that those standing blocks away could feel it. My sword is unbreakable, and today, you'll have the honor of dying from it. You should be proud. Terry tightened his grip on the hilt before he sprang toward Dustin, his speed so fast that the naked eye couldn't follow up and left an afterimage. He's so quick. The audience was startled. The average martial artist could no longer catch sight of his blade due to its speed, but its murderous quality was enough to frighten them. You're dead meat. With the aid of his sword, Terry was unstoppable. Right before the tip of the sword could pierce through Dustin's chest, 2 fingers reached out to pinch the blade, bringing Terry's attack to a halt. Instantly, whatever murderous aura there was vanished.